In the heart of the scorching desert, where the sun burns relentlessly and the sands stretch endlessly, a young nomad named Zari makes a discovery that will change her life forever. Hidden within the crumbling ruins of a forgotten temple, she finds an ancient map. Its edges worn by time, but its markings still clear. This map promises something almost impossible: the location of the Enchanted Oasis, a place whispered about in legends, said to grant eternal life to those who find it. For Zari, this isn't just a tale of myth and magic, it's a glimmer of hope. Her village is dying, ravaged by drought and despair, and this journey might be the only chance to save them. But as she steps into the vast, unforgiving desert, the winds carry whispers of warnings, stories of those who sought the oasis and never returned. Zari's determination is fierce, but the desert holds secrets far older and darker than she could ever imagine. What will she uncover on this perilous quest, and what price will she have to pay for a chance at salvation? With the map clutched tightly in her hands, Zari sets out under the vast, star-studded sky. The desert at night is a different world, cool, silent, and alive, with the faint glow of constellations that seem to guide her every step. The ancient map, though cryptic, feels almost alive in her grasp, as if it pulses with the rhythm of the earth itself. She follows its markings carefully, her heart steady but her mind racing with questions. How far is the oasis? What will she find when she arrives? And most importantly, will it be enough to save her people? As dawn breaks, the horizon shifts from indigo to a fiery orange, and the desert begins to stir. The wind, at first a gentle whisper, grows into a howling force, whipping sand into the air like a veil of gold. Zari squints through the chaos, her scarf pulled tightly over her face, but the storm is relentless. She stumbles forward, searching for shelter, until her hand brushes against a rough, jagged surface, a cave hidden within the dunes. Relief washes over her as she ducks inside, the roar of the storm fading behind her. The cave is cool and dim, the air thick with the scent of ancient stone. As her eyes adjust, she notices the walls are not smooth, but covered in intricate carvings, their lines worn but still visible. The images tell a story, one of a lush oasis, its waters shimmering under the sun, and a massive serpent coiled protectively around it. The carvings are hauntingly beautiful, but the message is clear. The serpent is not just a guardian, but a judge. Those who seek the oasis with impure hearts face its wrath. Zari's breath catches as she studies the images, her fingers tracing the serpent's scales. Could this be real? And if so, what does it mean for her journey? The storm outside rages on, but Zari's thoughts turn inward. She sits cross-legged on the cave floor, the map spread before her, and her mind drifts to her village, their parched fields, their weary faces, their desperate hope. She had told herself this journey was for them, but now, in the quiet of the cave, doubts creep in. Is she truly selfless in her quest? Or is there a part of her, buried deep, that yearns for the power and glory of being the one to find the legendary oasis? The question gnaws at her, a serpent of its own coiling around her thoughts. When the storm finally subsides, the desert is calm once more, the air crisp and clear. Zari steps back into the sunlight, her resolve hardened but her heart heavier. The journey ahead is no longer just about following the map or navigating the desert. It's about confronting the shadows within herself, the parts she's tried to ignore. The oasis may hold the key to her village survival, but it also holds a mirror to her soul. With the sun at her back and the stars as her guide, she presses on, each step a test of her courage and her character. The desert watches silently, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. As Zari trudges through the endless dunes, her steps growing heavier with each passing hour, a faint silhouette appears on the horizon. At first, it's nothing more than a shimmering mirage, but as she draws closer, it solidifies into the figure of a man. His robes are tattered, his face weathered by the sun, and his eyes gleam with a mix of curiosity and cunning. Around his neck hangs an assortment of strange trinkets, but it's the flask in his hand that catches Zari's attention. A vessel of polished stone, its surface etched with symbols that seem to pulse faintly in the sunlight. The merchant greets her with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. A rare sight, a traveler in these parts, he says, his voice low and gravelly. The desert is no place for the unprepared. Tell me, child, what brings you so far from home? Zari hesitates, clutching the map tighter, but the merchant's gaze lingers on it, sharp and calculating. Ah, he says, nodding slowly, you seek the Enchanted Oasis. A fool's errand, if ever there was one. His words sting, but Zari stands her ground. The oasis is real, she insists, her voice steady despite the dryness in her throat. And I will find it. The merchant chuckles, a sound like sand slipping through an hourglass. Many have said the same, he replies, but none have returned. The oasis is cursed, you see. It promises life, but delivers only death. He holds up the flask, its surface catching the light. This, however, is real. A single sip will quench your thirst for days. A fair trade, perhaps, for that map of yours. Zari's grip tightens on the map, her knuckles whitening. I can't, she says firmly. My village needs this. I need this. The merchant shrugs, his smile fading. As you wish, he says, but remember this moment when the desert takes its toll. With that, he turns and vanishes into the haze, leaving Zari alone once more. His words linger, though, like a shadow she can't shake. Cursed, could it be true? The day wears on, the sun blazing mercilessly overhead. Zari's steps slow, her mind churning with doubt. What if the merchant was right? What if the oasis is nothing but a trap? Her resolve wavers, her thoughts clouded by exhaustion and the relentless heat. By nightfall, she collapses onto the sand, her body spent and her spirit frayed. Sleep comes quickly, but it's restless, filled with dreams that feel more like warnings. In her dream, she stands before the oasis, its waters shimmering like liquid silver. But as she reaches for it, the ground trembles and the serpent emerges, its scales glistening, its eyes burning with a cold, piercing light. Who are you to seek this place? It hisses, its voice echoing in her mind. What darkness do you carry? Zari tries to speak, but no words come. The serpent coils tighter, its gaze unrelenting, and she wakes with a start, her heart pounding. The desert is silent, the stars above piercingly bright, but as she reaches for her water flask, her hand freezes. It's empty, completely dry, as if it had never held a drop. Panic surges through her as she checks again and again, but there's no mistake. The water is gone. Her throat tightens, and for the first time since she began her journey, Zari feels truly alone. The desert, the serpent, the merchant's words, they all seem to whisper the same question. How far are you willing to go, and what will you sacrifice to get there? The night stretches on, endless and still, as Zari sits beneath the stars, her thoughts a storm of fear and determination. The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The oasis is no longer just a destination. It's a test, one that will demand more from her than she ever imagined. Desperation claws at Zari's throat as the sun beats down, relentless and unyielding. Her lips are cracked, her skin burned raw, and her vision blurs with exhaustion. The map, now a lifeline, guides her toward a faint mark labeled Hidden Well. Hope flickers weakly in her chest, but it's enough to keep her moving. Hours later, she stumbles upon a cluster of tents, nestled between towering dunes, their fabric fluttering in the breeze. A group of desert dwellers stands guard, their eyes sharp and their hands resting on curved blades. They watch her approach, silent and unmoving, like statues carved from the desert itself. The eldest of the tribe steps forward, his face lined with years of wind and sand. Few find this place, he says, his voice as dry as the air, and none leave without paying the toll. Zari's heart sinks as she looks at the well, its waters glistening like liquid gold under the sun. She has nothing of value, nothing except the pendant around her neck, a gift from her mother, the last piece of her past. Her fingers tremble as she unclasps it, holding it out to the elder. "This is all I have," she says, her voice hoarse but steady. The elder takes the pendant, his gaze lingering on its intricate carvings. "A mother's love," he murmurs almost to himself, "a heavy price to pay." He looks at Zari, his eyes piercing. "But know this, the oasis you seek is no haven. It is a place of trials, of tests. The serpent's curse is real, and it does not forgive." His words hang in the air, heavy and foreboding, but Zari has no choice. She nods, her resolve hardening even as her heart aches for the loss of her pendant. The tribe steps aside, allowing her to approach the well. The water is cool and clear, and she drinks deeply, her body reviving with every sip. Strength floods her limbs and her mind clears, but the elder's warning lingers, a shadow she can't shake. The serpent's curse, the trials ahead. She looks back at the tribe, their faces unreadable, and realizes she's traded more than a pendant. She's traded a piece of her past for an uncertain future. As she leaves the camp, the wind carries the faint sound of chanting, a low, mournful melody that seems to follow her. The pendant is gone, its weight replaced by a new burden, the weight of doubt. The elder's words echo in her mind, intertwining with the whispers of the desert. What is the serpent's curse? What trials await her, and what will she lose next? The questions gnaw at her, but there's no turning back. The oasis calls, its promise as alluring as it is dangerous, and Zari knows she must face whatever lies ahead. With each step, the desert feels less like a barren wasteland, and more like a living, breathing entity, watching, waiting, testing her resolve. The horizon ahead of Zari is a sea of golden waves, a towering dune that rises like a silent giant, its crest shimmering under the relentless sun. The map in her hands marks this as the next step in her journey, but the dune is no ordinary obstacle. Its sands shift constantly, swallowing footprints and erasing any sense of direction. Zari's legs ache as she begins her ascent, each step sinking deeply into the loose sand, her progress slow and grueling. The air is thick with heat, and the only sound is the whisper of the wind, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and dust. As she climbs higher, the world around her begins to blur. The sun's glare plays tricks on her eyes, and for a moment, she thinks she sees something in the distance. A patch of green, the outline of huts, the sound of laughter. Her heart leaps as she realizes it's her village, but not as she left it. The fields are lush, the wells brimming with water, and the people are smiling, their faces free of the weariness she remembers. It's a vision of what could be, a future where her quest has succeeded. Tears sting her eyes as she quickens her pace, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. But as she reaches out, her fingers brushing the air where the village stood, the image shatters like glass. The laughter fades, the green vanishes, and the desert returns, barren and unyielding. The mirage leaves behind a hollow ache in her chest, a cruel reminder of what she's fighting for, and how far she still has to go. The voice of the desert seems to mock her, whispering that her efforts are in vain, that the oasis is nothing more than a dream for fools. Zari sinks to her knees, the weight of despair pressing down on her shoulders. For the first time, she considers giving up, just as her hope begins to falter. A sudden gust of wind sweeps across the dune, carrying with it a flurry of sand that stings her skin. She shields her face, but when the wind subsides, something catches her eye. The shifting sands have revealed a narrow path, barely visible, winding its way through the dune like a serpent. It's as if the desert itself has offered her a way forward, a hidden route she might have missed if not for the wind's guidance. Zari hesitates, her heart torn between fear and determination. The mirage taunts still echo in her mind, but the path ahead feels like a sign, a challenge perhaps, but also an opportunity. With a deep breath, she rises to her feet, her resolve hardening once more. The oasis may be a dream, but it's a dream worth fighting for. The path is narrow and treacherous, but she takes the first step, then another, her movements steady despite the exhaustion in her limbs. The wind picks up again, this time at her back, as if urging her forward. The desert is testing her, pushing her to her limits, but Zari knows she must keep going. The mirage may have been an illusion, but the path is real, and so is her determination. Each step brings her closer to the unknown, to the trials that await, and to the truth of what the Enchanted Oasis really holds. As Zari descends the final slope of the towering dune, the landscape shifts dramatically. The golden sands give way to jagged rock formations, their edges sharp against the fading light of the sun. Ahead lies a canyon, its walls towering and ominous, but what catches her attention is the glow emanating from within. As night falls, the canyon is awash with an otherworldly light, the source of which becomes clear as she steps closer. Countless crystals embedded in the rock, pulsating with a soft, eerie radiance. The air hums faintly, a low vibration that resonates in her chest, and the map in her hand seems to tremble in response. This is the place. Beyond the canyon lies the Enchanted Oasis. The crystals are mesmerizing, their light casting shifting patterns on the canyon walls. Yet as Zari steps forward, the energy they emit begins to take its toll. Her vision blurs, the world around her warping like a reflection in rippling water. Strange whispers fill the air, growing louder with each step. At first, they're indistinct, but soon they form words, familiar voices that send a chill down her spine. Zari, please, a voice pleads, trembling and desperate. It's the voice of a villager, one she's known since childhood. Turn back, the desert will kill you. Save yourself. Another voice joins the chorus, softer but no less urgent. Keep going, my child, it says, and her heart aches as she recognizes her mother's voice. You're so close. Don't give up now. The conflicting voices swirl around her, tugging at her resolve. The crystal's energy intensifies, distorting her thoughts and clouding her judgment. For a moment, she hesitates, torn between the pleas of her people and the encouragement of her mother. The canyon seems to close in around her, the glowing crystals casting long, flickering shadows that feel almost alive. Zari takes a deep breath, her hands trembling as she clutches the map. She knows this is a test, not of her strength or endurance, but of her will. The crystals are amplifying her doubts, her fears, her deepest desires. To move forward, she must silence the noise and trust in her purpose. Closing her eyes, she blocks out the voices, the light, the hum of the crystals. She focuses on the feel of the map in her hands, the rough texture of the canyon floor beneath her feet, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Step by step, she moves forward, her senses attuned to the path ahead. The journey through the canyon is agonizingly slow. The crystal's energy presses against her, a tangible force that threatens to overwhelm her. The voices grow louder, more insistent, but she refuses to open her eyes. She clings to the memory of her village, the faces of her people, the promise of the oasis. The air grows colder, the hum of the crystals sharper, but she presses on, her determination unwavering. At last, the energy begins to fade. The voices grow distant, the light dims, and the canyon's walls seem to recede. Zari opens her eyes just as she steps out of the canyon, the night sky stretching above her in all its starry glory. Behind her, a loud crack echoes through the air, and she turns to see the crystals shattering, their light extinguished in an instant. The canyon collapses, the path sealed forever. For a moment, she stands in silence, the weight of what she's just endured settling over her. The test was cruel, but she passed it. The oasis is closer now, its pull stronger than ever. Yet the canyon's trial lingers in her mind, a stark reminder that the desert's challenges are not just physical, they are tests of the heart, of the soul. And as she looks ahead, the stars seem to align, guiding her toward the final leg of her journey. The enchanted oasis is within reach, but the greatest trials may still lie ahead. The horizon opens before Zari, like a page from a storybook, revealing a sight so breathtaking it steals her breath away. The enchanted oasis stretches out in a vast, shimmering expanse, its waters glistening under the moonlight like liquid silver. The air is cool and heavy, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers and damp earth, a stark contrast to the arid desert she's endured for so long. But as beautiful as it is, there's an undeniable tension here, a stillness that feels almost unnatural, as if the oasis itself is holding its breath. From the depths of the water, a ripple spreads, growing larger and more pronounced until the surface erupts. The serpent emerges, its massive form coiling upward, scales catching the moonlight and glowing like molten gold. Its eyes, sharp and piercing, lock onto Zari, and for a moment, she feels as though it can see straight into her soul. The serpent's voice is low and resonant, reverberating through the air like thunder. Why have you come, child of the desert? What do you seek in this sacred place? Zari's heart pounds, but she stands tall, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. My village is dying, she says, her words carrying the weight of desperation. The drought has taken everything. I came to find the oasis, to bring back its waters and save my people. Her explanation hangs in the air, and for a moment, there is silence. The serpent tilts its head, its gaze narrowing as if searching for something deeper. Your words are true, it says finally, but your heart holds doubt. You carry shadows, child, fears you have not faced. The oasis does not grant its gifts lightly. To prove your worth, you must confront what lies within. Zari's stomach twists as the serpent's challenge sinks in. Confront her deepest fear. She's faced the desert's trials, its storms and mirages, but this feels different. The serpent's gaze doesn't waver, its presence overwhelming, and yet there's a strange calm in its voice, as if it knows more about her than she does herself. The water before her begins to shift, its surface swirling and churning until it forms a mirror-like reflection. But instead of her own face, the image shows a familiar scene: her village, its people gathered in the square, their faces gaunt and their eyes hollow. The ground is cracked and dry, the wells empty, and the air is thick with despair. Zari's heart aches at the sight, but then the image changes. She sees herself standing at the edge of the oasis, a flask of its water in her hand, but the villagers' faces remain unchanged. Their suffering continues, and her efforts feel meaningless. The serpent's voice cuts through her thoughts. This is your fear, that your sacrifice will be for nothing, that you cannot truly save them. Zari's breath catches as the truth of its words hits her. She had buried this fear deep, unwilling to face it, but now it's laid bare before her. The serpent's challenge is clear. She must confront this doubt, this belief that her actions might not be enough. The waters of the oasis ripple again, and the serpent lowers its head, its massive form hovering just above the surface. Step forward, it commands. Face what you fear, or turn back now and leave this place behind. Zari hesitates, her mind racing. The oasis is so close, its waters within reach, but the serpent's challenge feels like a chasm she's not sure she can cross. Yet she knows there's no other choice. Her village's survival depends on her courage, not just in braving the desert's dangers, but in facing the doubts that have haunted her every step. With a deep breath, Zari takes a step toward the water, her reflection rippling as she approaches. The serpent watches, its golden scales glinting in the moonlight, as the oasis prepares to reveal its final test. The water of the oasis ripples violently, and before Zari can react, the serpent's gaze locks onto hers. The world around her blurs, the oasis fading into a swirl of light and shadow. When her vision clears, she finds herself standing in the heart of her village, but everything is different. The fields are lush and green, the wells brimming with clear, cool water. Children laugh as they run through the streets, and the villagers gather in the square, their faces glowing with joy. It's a vision of prosperity, of life restored, but something feels wrong. Zari looks around, searching for her own face among the crowd, but she's nowhere to be seen. The villagers move about their day, their conversations filled with gratitude, but not once do they mention her name. It's as if she never existed, as if her journey, her sacrifices, had never happened. A cold knot forms in her chest, the sting of insignificance, cutting deeper than any physical pain she's endured. Do you see now? The serpent's voice echoes in her mind, its tone neither cruel nor kind, but matter of fact. This is what you fear, not failure, but being forgotten. The thought that your efforts might vanish like footprints in the sand. Zari's hands clench into fists, her nails digging into her palms. The vision is a mirror held up to her innermost fears, and it's more painful than she could have imagined. She steps forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "You're wrong," she says, her words cutting through the silence. "This isn't about me. It's not about being remembered or praised. It's about them." She gestures to the villagers, their laughter ringing in her ears. "If they can live, if they can thrive, then it doesn't matter if they know my name. My worth isn't tied to their gratitude. It's tied to my love for them, to the fact that I was willing to do whatever it took to save them." The serpent's eyes narrow, its massive head tilting as if considering her words. For a moment, the vision wavers, the edges of the scene blurring like a mirage. Then, with a low rumble, the serpent nods. "You have passed the final test," it says, its voice carrying a note of respect. "But know this, the oasis's power is not without cost. To take its waters is to bind yourself to its magic, to carry a burden that few can bear. Are you willing to pay that price?" Zari hesitates, the weight of the serpent's words settling over her. The vision fades, and she finds herself back at the edge of the oasis, the serpent's golden eyes watching her intently. The air is thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the gentle lapping of the water against the shore. She looks down at the flask in her hand, then out at the desert beyond, her mind racing. What is the price? What burden will she carry? The serpent's warning hangs in the air, a question without an answer. Yet as Zari stands there, the faces of her people flash before her, their hope, their resilience, their unwavering faith in her. She thinks of the pendant she traded, the trials she's faced, the doubts she's conquered. The oasis is more than a source of water. It's a symbol of sacrifice, of the lengths one will go to for those they love. With a deep breath, Zari steps forward, her decision made. "I'll pay it," she says, her voice steady. "Whatever the cost, I'll pay it." The serpent's gaze softens, and for the first time, there's something almost like sympathy in its eyes. It dips its head, the motion slow and deliberate, and the waters of the oasis begin to glow, their light spreading outward like a promise. The final test is over, but the true journey is just beginning. As Zari kneels to fill her flask, the serpent's voice echoes one last time. "Remember, child of the desert, the price of power is paid not in gold, but in pieces of the self. Choose wisely what you are willing to lose." The words linger, a quiet warning, but Zari's resolve remains unshaken. She has come too far, fought too hard, to turn back now. The oasis's waters shimmer in her hands, their light reflecting the strength of her heart, and she knows that whatever comes next, she will face it with the same courage that brought her here. The desert watches silently, its winds carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers. As Zari rises to her feet, the flask cradled in her hands. The journey home awaits, but the oasis's secrets are far from revealed. The serpent's warning echoes in her mind, a reminder that some sacrifices are eternal, and some burdens are carried long after the journey ends. Yet as she takes her first step back into the sands, the weight feels lighter, her purpose clearer. The oasis has given her more than water, it has given her clarity, and with that, she walks into the horizon, ready to face whatever lies ahead. The serpent's words hang in the air, heavy and unyielding, like the stillness before a storm. The waters of the oasis can heal your village, it says, its voice resonant and ancient, but only if you are willing to give a piece of yourself in return. Your life force must replenish what is taken. Without it, the waters will lose their power. Zari's heart pounds in her chest, the weight of the serpent's demand pressing down on her. She had expected a price, but not this, not the very essence of her being. Her hands tremble as she clutches the flask, its cool surface, a stark contrast to the heat of her thoughts. The serpent's golden eyes narrow, its massive form coiled protectively around the oasis. You have until dawn, it says, its tone final. Choose wisely. With that, it slips beneath the surface, the waters rippling softly as it disappears, leaving Zari alone with her thoughts. The night stretches before her, vast and silent, the stars above gleaming like distant witnesses to her turmoil. She sinks to her knees at the edge of the oasis, the flask resting in her lap. The weight of the serpent's ultimatum settles over her, a storm of emotions churning within. To save her village, she must give up a part of herself, a sacrifice that feels both inevitable and impossible. Her mind races, memories of her journey flashing before her eyes, the endless dunes, the shifting sands, the whispers of the desert that seem to guide and test her at every turn. She thinks of her people, their faces gaunt with hunger, their eyes filled with a desperate hope. She had promised them salvation, but at what cost? As the hours pass, the night seems to deepen, wrapping her in its stillness. Zari's thoughts turn inward, her fears and doubts rising to the surface like shadows in the moonlight. What will happen to her if she gives up her life force? Will she fade away, her existence erased like footprints in the sand? Or will she remain, forever changed, a part of her lost to the oasis's magic? The questions swirl in her mind, each one more daunting than the last. But amidst the fear, another thought emerges, one that surprises her with its clarity. This journey has never been just about her. Every step, every trial, every sacrifice has been for her village, for the people who raised her, who believed in her, who entrusted her with their survival. The serpent's challenge is not just a test of her courage, but of her love. And love, she realizes, is not measured in what one gains, but in what one is willing to give. The first light of dawn begins to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The oasis glimmers in the early light, its waters reflecting the promise of a new day. Zari rises to her feet, the flask clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart is heavy, but her resolve is clear. She knows what she must do. As the sun's rays break over the dunes, Zari steps forward, her shadow stretching long across the sands. The serpent emerges once more, its eyes fixed on her, waiting. "I've made my choice," she says, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "I will give what is needed." The serpent studies her for a moment, its gaze piercing, as if searching for any lingering doubt. Finding none, it dips its head in acknowledgement. The waters of the oasis begin to glow, their light intensifying as Zari kneels at its edge. She holds the flask aloft, her hands trembling but her spirit unyielding. The serpent's voice echoes in her mind, a final warning. Remember, child, this is a bond that cannot be broken. The cost is eternal. Zari closes her eyes, her breath steady, her heart at peace. She thinks of her village, of the laughter that will return to their homes, of the fields that will once again bloom with life. And in that moment, she knows that her sacrifice is not a loss, but a gift, a testament to the love she carries for those she holds dear. As the first rays of sunlight touch the oasis, Zari pours the water into the flask, her life force intertwining with its magic. The desert watches in silence, its winds carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers as the first step toward healing begins. The journey is far from over, but Zari walks forward, her heart lighter, her purpose clear. The oasis has given her more than water. It has given her the strength to face the unknown and the courage to embrace the sacrifices that come with love. The air around the oasis grows still, as if the desert itself is holding its breath. Zari kneels at the water's edge, the flask trembling in her hands. The serpent's golden eyes bore into hers, its voice a low, resonant hum that seems to vibrate through her very bones. You have agreed to the sacrifice, it says, its tone both solemn and probing. But the oasis does not yield its gifts lightly. To prove your worth, you must drink from its waters and face the truth of your heart. Zari's breath catches, her pulse quickening. She had braved the desert's storms, its shifting sands, and its cruel mirages, but this feels different. The serpent's words carry a weight that settles deep within her, a challenge that goes beyond the physical. She looks down at the flask, its surface glinting in the moonlight, and for a moment, doubt flickers in her chest. What truths will the water reveal? What parts of herself will she have to confront? But there's no turning back. She dips the flask into the oasis, the water cool and shimmering as it fills. The serpent watches silently, its massive form coiled like a guardian, as Zari raises the flask to her lips. The first sip is like fire, burning as it slides down her throat, and she gasps, her body recoiling from the intensity. Yet she doesn't stop. She drinks deeply, the water's heat spreading through her veins, and suddenly, the world around her dissolves into a cascade of images. Visions flood her mind, vivid and unrelenting. She sees herself as a child, running through the village with her friends, laughter ringing in her ears. The memory is sweet, but it's followed by another, a moment of regret, a harsh word spoken to her mother that she can never take back. The visions shift again, showing her unfulfilled dreams, the life she might have had if she hadn't chosen this path. She sees herself as a healer, a teacher, a leader, each possibility shimmering like a mirage before fading into the sands. The water burns, its heat searing through her, but Zari clenches her teeth and endures. Tears stream down her face, not from the pain, but from the weight of what she's seeing. The serpent's voice cuts through the chaos, its words sharp and clear. The oasis reveals what lies within. Face it, child, and do not look away. And so she does. She confronts each vision, each memory, with a courage she didn't know she possessed. The joys, the regrets, the dreams, they are all a part of her, threads woven into the tapestry of her life. She doesn't shy away from the pain or the doubt. She embraces it, understanding that these are the pieces that make her whole. The water's fire begins to fade, its heat replaced by a warmth that spreads through her chest, a sense of clarity that feels almost like peace. When the visions finally subside, Zari opens her eyes to find the serpent watching her, its golden gaze softer now, almost approving. "You have faced the truth of your heart," it says, its voice carrying a note of respect. "And in doing so, you have proven yourself worthy." The oasis's waters shimmer in the moonlight, their light brighter than before, as the serpent dips its head in acknowledgement. "Take what you have come for, child of the desert. But remember, the oasis's gift is not just water. It is the strength to carry the burdens of love and sacrifice." Zari nods, her hands steady as she fills the flask to the brim. The water glows faintly, its power palpable, and she feels a strange sense of reverence as she seals it. The serpent slips beneath the surface, its massive form disappearing into the depths, and the oasis falls silent once more. As she rises to her feet, the flask cradled in her hands, Zari feels a quiet resolve settle over her. The journey has changed her, not just in body, but in spirit. The visions may have shown her the cracks in her heart, but they also revealed its strength. The desert's trials, the serpent's tests, the oasis's truths, they have all shaped her into someone capable of bearing the weight of this gift. The stars above seem to shine a little brighter as she turns toward the horizon, the first light of dawn painting the sands in hues of gold and pink. The road home is long, but Zari walks it with a newfound certainty, her steps steady and her heart full. The oasis has given her more than water. It has given her the courage to face whatever lies ahead. And as she disappears into the desert, the winds carry with them the faint scent of blooming flowers, a promise of life renewed. The desert stretches before Zari, its sands glowing softly under the rising sun, as if the land itself has softened in acknowledgement of her triumph. The vial of oasis water rests securely in her hands, its faint glow a constant reminder of the weight of her sacrifice. The journey back feels different lighter, though the burden she carries is no less significant. The winds that once howled with menace now whisper gently, their tones almost reverent, and the dunes seem to part before her, guiding her steps with a quiet respect. It's as though the desert, once her adversary, has become an ally, recognizing the depth of her courage and the purity of her purpose. As she walks, the horizon shimmers with the promise of home, but the path is not without its challenges. The faint sound of footsteps breaks the silence, and Zari turns to see the merchant from earlier, his tattered robes fluttering in the breeze. His eyes gleam with a familiar cunning, but there's a new edge to his gaze, one that lingers on the vial in her hands. "You've done it," he says, his voice low and measured. "You've found the oasis. I knew you were special, child." His words are smooth, but Zari feels the tension beneath them. She tightens her grip on the vial, her instincts sharpened by the trials she's faced. The merchant steps closer, his movements deliberate, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Such a treasure you carry," he says, his tone almost reverent. "But the desert is vast and the road is long. Surely you could spare a drop or two for a weary traveler." His hand extends, palm up, but Zari doesn't flinch. She remembers the serpent's warning, the price she paid, and the lessons the desert taught her. This man is not to be trusted. I've made my choices, she replies, her voice steady, and I'll bear the consequences. But this water isn't meant for you. The merchant's smile falters, and for a moment, his mask slips, revealing the desperation beneath. You don't understand, he says, his voice rising. I've spent my life searching for this. You can't just walk away. His hand darts forward, aiming for the vial, but Zari is ready. She steps back, her movements swift and deliberate, her body remembering the agility she gained from navigating the shifting dunes and treacherous canyons. The merchant lunges again, his desperation turning to anger, but Zari sidesteps him with ease. Her mind flashes to the serpent's final words about the strength to carry burdens, and she realizes that her greatest weapon isn't her speed or her cunning, but her resolve. She looks the merchant in the eye, her gaze unwavering. You've lost your way, she says, her voice calm but firm. The desert doesn't reward greed, it tests hearts. And yours has failed. Her words strike a nerve. The merchant hesitates, his expression faltering, and for a moment, Zari sees the shadow of the man. He might have been someone driven by hope, not greed. But the moment passes, and his face hardens. With a frustrated growl, he turns and disappears into the dunes, his figure swallowed by the endless sands. Zari watches him go, her heart heavy, but her spirit unshaken. The encounter is a reminder that not all trials are physical. Some are battles of the soul. As she resumes her journey, the vial feels lighter in her hands, though its weight is no less profound. The sun climbs higher, casting the desert in a golden light, and the winds carry with them the faint scent of distant rain. For the first time, Zari allows herself to imagine what lies ahead, the faces of her people, the fields restored, the laughter returned. The journey has changed her, not just in body, but in spirit. She walks with a new confidence, her steps steady and sure, her heart aligned with the rhythm of the desert. The sands stretch endlessly before her, but Zari no longer feels alone. The oasis's water is more than a gift. It's a testament to her courage, her love, and her willingness to face the unknown. And as she moves forward, the desert seems to sing a quiet song, its melody a promise of renewal, of life reborn. The road is long, but Zari walks it with a strength born of sacrifice. Her spirit is unyielding as the land itself. The sun dips low on the horizon, painting the desert in hues of amber and gold, as Zari approaches the familiar cluster of tents, nestled between the dunes. The tribe's camp comes alive at her arrival, the soft murmur of voices and the scent of cooking fires filling the air. The elder, his face weathered by years of wisdom and wind, steps forward. His sharp eyes fall on the vial in her hands, and for a moment, there is silence. Then, slowly, he bows his head, a gesture of deep respect that sends a ripple of awe through the gathered tribe. You have done what many could not, the elder says, his voice carrying the weight of generations. The oasis has chosen you, and so we honor you. His words are simple, yet they carry a profound meaning that settles over Zari like a mantle. The tribe follows his lead, bowing their heads in unison, their reverence a stark contrast to the skepticism she faced when she first passed through. Zari feels a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of belonging she has never known. These people, once strangers, now feel like kin. They offer her food, water, and supplies, replenishing her for the journey ahead. The elder hands her a small pouch of dried fruit, his eyes filled with a quiet pride. "You carry more than water now," he says. "You carry hope. May the desert guide your steps." As night falls, the camp gathers around the fire, their voices rising in a haunting melody that echoes across the sands. Zari sits among them, the vial resting safely in her satchel, and for the first time in what feels like forever, she allows herself a moment of peace. The warmth of the fire, the laughter of the tribe, the ancient songs that seem to weave through the very fabric of the desert, it all fills her with a sense of connection she didn't know she was missing. But even as she basks in this fleeting tranquility, her thoughts drift to her village, to the parched fields and the faces of her people. The journey is not over, and the urgency of her mission presses against her heart like a stone. When the fire burns low and the stars blanket the sky, Zari rises to her feet. The tribe watches in silence as she prepares to leave, their respect for her unspoken but palpable. The elder steps forward once more, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The desert is vast, but you are its child," he says. "Go with our blessing, and may the winds carry you safely home." Zari nods, her throat tight with emotion, and turns toward the horizon. As she steps into the night, the weight of the vial feels lighter, though its significance has only grown. The tribe's camp fades behind her, but their songs linger in her mind, a reminder of the bonds she has forged and the strength she has gained. The desert stretches before her, vast and unyielding, but Zari walks with a heart full of purpose. The oasis's water is within her grasp, and with it, the promise of renewal, not just for her village, but for herself. The journey has changed her, and as the stars guide her steps, she knows she is ready for whatever lies ahead. The final stretch of desert looms ahead, an endless expanse of golden dunes that seem to stretch into eternity. Zari's steps grow slower, her legs heavy, as though the sands themselves are pulling her down. The vial of oasis water, once a source of hope, now feels like an anchor, its weight a constant reminder of the price she paid. Her body aches, every muscle screaming for rest, but she forces herself to keep moving. The sun beats down mercilessly, its heat blurring the horizon and distorting the world around her. As she trudges forward, the air seems to thicken, the line between reality and illusion blurring. The dunes shift unnaturally, their shapes twisting into something almost alive. Zari blinks hard, trying to clear her vision, but the desert refuses to cooperate. Before her, the oasis materializes once more, its shimmering waters glowing with an otherworldly light. The serpent rises from its depths, its golden scales reflecting the sun's glare, its eyes piercing through her exhaustion. "Turn back," it hisses, its voice echoing in her mind. "The price is too high. You will not survive." Zari stumbles, her legs threatening to give way, but she steadies herself. She knows this isn't real. It's a trick, a final test conjured by the desert itself. The serpent's words claw at her resolve, but she clings to the memory of her village, the faces of her people, the promise she made to save them. "No," she whispers, her voice cracking but firm. "I won't stop, not now, not ever." The vision shatters like glass, the oasis and the serpent, dissolving into the scorching air. The desert returns to its barren stillness, but the toll on Zari's body is undeniable. Her breath comes in ragged gasps, her vision swimming with dark spots. Every step feels like a battle, every movement a triumph of will over weakness. The vial in her hand feels impossibly heavy, its weight a cruel contrast to the hope it carries. Yet she keeps going, driven by a force deeper than exhaustion, stronger than fear. The sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the sand, and Zari's strength wanes with it. Her legs buckle, and she collapses to her knees, the grains of sand biting into her skin. The world spins around her, the horizon tilting dangerously, but she forces herself to crawl forward. Her hands claw at the ground, her fingers digging into the sand as she drags herself inch by agonizing inch. The thought of her village sustains her, their faces vivid in her mind, their voices a distant chorus urging her on. Finally, as the first stars begin to pierce the twilight sky, the familiar outline of her village appears on the horizon. The sight is almost too much to bear. Tears sting her eyes, mingling with the sweat and dust on her face, as she pushes herself to her feet one last time. Her body screams in protest, every fiber of her being begging her to stop, but she stumbles forward, her heart pounding with a desperate rhythm. Just as she reaches the outskirts of the village, her strength gives out completely. Her legs crumple beneath her, and she collapses onto the hard-packed earth, the vial still clutched tightly in her hand. The last thing she sees before darkness claims her is the flicker of a lantern, its light bobbing toward her like a beacon. The sound of voices reaches her ears, faint and distant, but filled with urgency. And then everything fades to black. The desert falls silent, its winds carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers, as Zari lies still beneath the stars. The journey has taken everything from her, but it has also given her everything. A chance to save her people, a chance to prove her love. And as the lantern light draws closer, the vial of oasis water glows faintly, its light a promise of life renewed, of hope fulfilled. The desert watches, its secrets now shared, as Zari's story reaches its final chapter. But even in stillness, her spirit burns bright, a testament to the strength of the human heart and the power of sacrifice. The lantern light grows brighter, its warm glow cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. Zari's villagers rush to her side, their faces a blur of concern and relief. Hands reach out to lift her, their voices a chorus of urgent whispers as they carry her toward the heart of the village. She feels their strength, their care, but her body is too heavy, her energy slipping away like sand through an hourglass. The vial, still clutched in her hand, pulses faintly, its glow a silent testament to the sacrifice she's made. The village elder emerges from the gathering crowd, his weathered face etched with a mix of awe and sorrow. He kneels beside Zari, his trembling fingers brushing the vial as if it were a sacred relic. The oasis water, he murmurs, his voice heavy with reverence. She has done it. She has brought life back to us all. His words ripple through the villagers, their gasps and murmurs filling the night air. For a moment, there is silence, a collective breath held in anticipation. The elder rises, his movements deliberate, and signals for the villagers to gather around the dry well at the center of the village. They carry Zari gently, laying her on a woven mat nearby as they prepare to pour the water. The vial is uncorked, its contents shimmering with an otherworldly light, and the elder pours it slowly into the well. The sound of the water hitting the parched stone echoes like a heartbeat, each drop a promise of renewal. At first, there is nothing. The well remains silent, its depths dark and lifeless. Then, a faint trickle breaks the stillness, followed by a rush of water that surges upward, clear and cool, filling the well to its brim. The villagers erupt into cheers, their joy spilling over as the water flows freely for the first time in years. Children dance at the edges, their laughter ringing out like music, while others cup the water in their hands, marveling at its purity. The land itself seems to awaken, the cracked earth softening as green shoots push their way through the soil. Trees that had stood barren for years begin to sprout leaves, their branches reaching toward the sky as if in gratitude. The air grows sweet with the scent of blooming flowers, and the village transforms before their eyes, a barren wasteland reborn into a thriving oasis. But amidst the celebration, Zari lies still, her breathing shallow and her face pale. The villagers turn to her, their joy tempered by worry. The elder kneels beside her once more, his hand resting on her forehead. The oasis demands a price, he says softly, his voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. Her life force has sustained it. She has given all she has to save us. The villagers fall silent, their faces shadowed with grief. Tears stream down their cheeks as they gather around her, their hands reaching out to touch her gently, to offer what little comfort they can. Zari's eyes flutter open, her gaze weak but steady. She looks at the faces around her, the people she loves, and manages a faint smile. "It's enough," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "You're safe, that's all that matters." The elder bows his head, his voice trembling as he speaks. "You have given us more than water. You have given us hope, life, and a future. We will honor your sacrifice, Zari, always." The villagers echo his words, their voices blending into a single, heartfelt promise. They light candles, their flames flickering in the night, and begin to sing, their melody a tribute to the girl who saved them all. As the stars shine overhead, the village is alive with light and sound, a stark contrast to the quiet stillness of Zari's fading form. The desert, once harsh and unyielding, now seems to cradle her gently, its winds carrying the scent of blooming flowers and the soft murmur of gratitude. The villagers gather closer, their songs rising into the night, a final gift to the one who gave everything for their sake. And though Zari's strength wanes, her spirit remains unbroken, a beacon of love and sacrifice that will forever guide her people. The village elder rises slowly, his weathered hands trembling as they grip the edge of his robe. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows across his face, deepening the lines etched by years of wisdom and hardship. He turns to the gathered villagers, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "There is one last hope," he begins, his words carrying the weight of centuries. An ancient ritual, passed down through generations, that might restore what the oasis has taken. But it demands something from all of us: our faith, our gratitude, and our unity. The villagers exchange uneasy glances, their murmurs blending with the soft crackle of the fire. The elder steps closer to Zari, who lies pale and still on the woven mat, her breathing shallow, but her spirit unbroken. He places a hand on her forehead, his touch gentle yet resolute. The oasis took her life force to give us life, he says, his voice rising above the whispers. Now we must give ours to bring her back. Together, we can heal what has been broken. A hush falls over the crowd as the elder begins to chant, his voice low and rhythmic, like the pulse of the earth itself. One by one, the villagers join in, their voices weaving together into a tapestry of sound that seems to vibrate through the very air. They gather closer, forming a circle around Zari, their hands reaching out to touch her, to connect with her in a way that transcends words. The chant grows louder, more resonant, filling the night with a melody that feels both ancient and alive. Zari's eyelids flutter as the first wave of their collective energy washes over her. She feels it, a warmth that starts in her chest and spreads outward, like the first rays of dawn breaking through a long, cold night. The oasis's toll, the weight that had been pulling her into darkness, begins to lift, replaced by a strength that is not her own but is shared, given freely by the people she loves. The villagers' voices rise in unison, their gratitude and love pouring into the ritual, into Zari. They remember her courage, her sacrifice, the way she walked into the desert's heart and returned with the gift of life. They remember the laughter of their children, the green shoots sprouting from the once barren earth, the promise of a future they thought was lost, and they give thanks not just for the water, but for the girl who brought it to them. Zari's breathing steadies, her color returning as the ritual reaches its peak. She opens her eyes, her gaze meeting those of the villagers gathered around her. In their faces, she sees more than gratitude. She sees a bond forged in the fires of trial and tempered by love. The elder's voice softens, the chant fading into a quiet hum as he leans down to her. "You are not alone, Zari," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "You never were." As the ritual ends, the villagers remain close, their hands still resting on her, their presence a living testament to the strength of community. Zari sits up slowly, her movements tentative but steady. She looks around at the faces of her people, her heart swelling with a love so profound it almost hurts. "You saved me," she whispers, her voice trembling with awe and gratitude. The elder shakes his head gently. "No, child, you saved us first, and now together we are whole." The villagers nod, their smiles radiant in the glow of the firelight. The night is alive with the sound of their voices, their laughter, their songs of celebration. The desert, once a place of harshness and isolation, now feels like a cradle, holding them all in its embrace. Zari rises to her feet, her strength returning with each breath. She looks out at the transformed village, at the fields blooming with life, the well brimming with water, and the people who stand united, their spirits unbroken. The oasis's price was steep, but the reward, this bond, this love is beyond measure, and as the stars shine down, their light reflected in the waters of the well, Zari knows that her journey was never just about survival. It was about connection, about the power of giving and receiving, about the strength that comes from standing together. The desert may have tested her, but it has also shown her the true meaning of home. The first rays of sunlight spill over the horizon, painting the village in hues of amber and gold. Zari awakens slowly, her body still heavy with the remnants of exhaustion, but her spirit feels lighter than it has in weeks. The air is thick with the scent of blooming flowers and damp earth, a stark contrast to the dry, barren landscape she left behind. As she sits up, her eyes widen at the sight before her. The village, once a shadow of its former self, now thrives with life. Fields of green stretch as far as the eye can see, their crops swaying gently in the morning breeze. Children laugh as they chase one another through the streets, their voices mingling with the hum of activity from the bustling marketplace. The well at the center of the village overflows with crystal clear water, its surface shimmering in the sunlight like a beacon of hope. The villagers notice her stirring and gather around, their faces alight with joy and gratitude. Zari, one of them, calls out, his voice trembling with emotion. "You've done it. You've saved us all." Others join in, their voices rising in a chorus of praise. But Zari shakes her head, her cheeks flushing with humility. "No," she says softly, her voice carrying the weight of her journey. "I didn't save us. We saved each other. Your strength, your unity. That's what brought us here." The elder steps forward, his eyes gleaming with pride. "You may not see it, child, but you are the heart of this village. Your courage inspired us, and your sacrifice gave us life. You are a hero, whether you believe it or not." Zari looks around at the faces of her people, their eyes filled with admiration and love, and feels a warmth spread through her chest. She realizes that while she may have walked the desert alone, she was never truly by herself. The village's faith in her, their unwavering support, had been her anchor through every trial. As the days pass, Zari steps into a new role, one she never imagined for herself. The villagers look to her for guidance, their trust in her unwavering. She becomes a leader, not by command, but by example. Her journey has taught her that true strength lies not in power or glory, but in selflessness and love. She shares the wisdom she gained in the desert, encouraging her people to care for one another, to face challenges together, and to never lose sight of what truly matters. The serpent's words echo in her mind, a constant reminder of the lessons she learned. The price of power is paid not in gold, but in pieces of the self. Under her guidance, the village flourishes. The once dry fields yield bountiful harvests, and the marketplace buzzes with trade and laughter. The children, now free from the shadow of drought, play and learn, their futures bright with possibility. Zari walks among them, her presence a quiet but steady force, her heart full, but her mind always reflecting on the path that brought her here. She knows that leadership is not about control, but about service, about lifting others up and creating a community where everyone can thrive. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon and the village gathers around the well to share stories and songs, Zari stands at the edge of the gathering, her gaze fixed on the stars. The serpent's final words come back to her, not as a warning, but as a guiding light. True power lies in selflessness and love. She smiles, her heart swelling with gratitude and purpose. The desert may have tested her, but it also gave her a gift, far greater than the oasis's waters. It showed her the strength of her own heart and the power of a united community. The villagers call her to join them, their voices rising in a song of celebration and unity. Zari steps forward, her steps light and her spirit unburdened. She is no longer just the girl who braved the desert. She is the leader who brought her people home. And as the stars shine down, their light reflected in the waters of the well. Zari knows that her journey was never just about survival. It was about connection, about the power of giving and receiving, and about the strength that comes from standing together. The desert may have tested her, but it has also shown her the true meaning of home. The village square hums with energy as the sun begins its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Zari stands at the center, her presence commanding yet gentle, as the villagers gather around. In her hands, she holds a small, intricately carved bowl filled with water from the oasis. The children sit cross-legged at her feet, their wide eyes fixed on her, their curiosity palpable. Today marks the beginning of a new tradition, a ceremony to honor the desert and the legends that shaped their lives. Long ago, Zari begins, her voice steady and warm. The desert was a place of fear for me. Its vastness, its silence, its storms, they all felt like enemies, but as I walked its sands, I learned something important. The desert isn't just a place of hardship, it's a teacher. It tests us, yes, but it also shows us who we are. She dips her fingers into the bowl, letting the water trickle onto the earth. This water is a gift, but it's also a reminder. A reminder of the courage it takes to face the unknown and the sacrifices we make for those we love. The children lean in, captivated by her words. One of them, a boy with dark, curious eyes, raises his hand. "But what if we're scared?" he asks, his voice small but sincere. Zari smiles, her gaze softening. "Being scared is part of the journey," she replies. Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about moving forward even when you do. And remember, you're never truly alone. The desert, the stars, the people around you, they're all here to guide you. As the ceremony continues, the villagers join in, each one pouring a drop of water onto the ground, a symbol of gratitude and unity. The air is filled with laughter and song, the rhythm of drums echoing through the square. Zari watches as the children take turns sharing their own stories, their voices timid at first, but growing stronger with each word. It's a moment of connection, of passing down the lessons she learned so that they may carry them forward. In the weeks that follow, the village thrives like never before. The fields yield abundant harvests, the marketplace buzzes with trade, and the well at the center of the village becomes a gathering place for laughter and conversation. Zari moves among her people, her presence a steadying force, her wisdom sought after by young and old alike. She teaches the children how to read the stars, how to listen to the whispers of the wind, and how to find strength in the face of adversity. Her story becomes a living legend, a beacon of hope and resilience. Yet, even as she finds peace in her role, Zari often finds herself drawn to the edge of the village, her gaze fixed on the endless horizon. The desert, once a place of trials, now feels like an old friend, one who still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. She wonders what lies beyond the dunes, what stories the shifting sands might tell if she were to walk them again. The thought lingers, a quiet hum in the back of her mind, a reminder that her journey, though complete, is just one chapter in a much larger story. One evening, as the stars begin to dot the sky, Zari sits by the well, her hands resting on its cool stone rim. The village is quiet, the day's activities giving way to the calm of night. A young girl, no older than Zari was when she first set out, approaches hesitantly. Do you think you'll ever go back? She asks, her voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of awe. Zari looks at her, then out at the desert, its silhouette stretching endlessly under the moonlight. The desert calls to those who are willing to listen, she says softly. And one day, maybe I'll answer, but for now, my place is here with all of you. The girl nods, her expression thoughtful, and sits beside Zari in companionable silence. Together, they watch the stars, their light reflecting in the well's shimmering waters. The desert whispers on the horizon, its secrets still hidden, its mysteries still waiting. And though Zari's heart is full, she knows that the journey is never truly over. It simply takes on new forms, new paths, and new stories yet to be told. The years have woven their stories into the fabric of Zari's life, each thread a testament to the trials and triumphs she endured. Now an old woman, her hair silver as the moonlight that once guided her through the desert, Zari sits beneath the sprawling branches of a tree that grew from the once barren soil. The village thrives around her, its laughter and songs a living testament to the legacy she helped build. Children play in the fields, their voices carrying on the breeze, while elders share tales of the girl who walked into the heart of the desert and returned with the gift of life. Zari watches it all with a quiet contentment, her heart full, but her spirit still attuned to the whispers of the sands. One night, as the stars blanket the sky and the village sleeps, Zari drifts into a dream unlike any she's had before. The air around her shifts, the familiar warmth of her home replaced by the cool stillness of the oasis. The waters shimmer with an ethereal glow, and from their depths, the serpent rises, its golden scales catching the light like molten fire. Its eyes, ancient and knowing, meet hers, and for the first time in decades, Zari feels the weight of its presence again. Zari, the serpent's voice resonates, deep and melodic. Your journey has not ended. It lives on in the hearts of those who follow your path. Its tone is softer now, almost tender, carrying a note of gratitude that surprises her. You broke a cycle that had endured for centuries. The oasis was once sought by those driven by greed, their hearts clouded by selfish desires. But your sacrifice, your selflessness, has inspired others to seek it for reasons pure and true. You have shown them that the greatest power lies not in what we take, but in what we give. Zari listens, her chest swelling with an emotion she can't quite name. The serpent's words are a balm to the quiet doubts she's carried, the moments when she wondered if her journey truly mattered. I only did what I thought was right, she says, her voice steady but tinged with humility. The serpent's gaze softens, its massive head tilting slightly. And that is why you succeeded where others failed. Your heart was true, and your love unwavering. It is a rare thing, Zari, to find someone who understands the true cost of power and pays it willingly. The waters of the oasis ripple, and the serpent gestures with a graceful motion of its head. The surface transforms into a vision, one that takes Zari's breath away. She sees her village, but not as it is now. She sees it centuries into the future, its fields lush and endless, its people thriving in harmony with the land. Children laugh as they run through orchards heavy with fruit, and elders share stories of the girl who braved the desert and changed their world. The vision shifts, showing travelers from distant lands, drawn not by greed, but by curiosity and a desire to learn from the village's wisdom. The oasis, once a hidden secret, becomes a symbol of hope and renewal. Its waters shared freely with those who seek it with pure hearts. Tears well in Zari's eyes as she watches, her heart swelling with a pride that is not for herself, but for the legacy she has helped create. The serpent's voice breaks through her thoughts, its tone gentle but firm. This is your gift, Zari, a glimpse of the future you have shaped. Your journey was never just about water or survival. It was about showing the world that even in the harshest of places, love and selflessness can flourish. The vision fades, the waters stilling once more, and Zari finds herself back in her bed, the first light of dawn creeping through the window. She sits up slowly, her body frail but her spirit unshaken. The dream lingers in her mind, its message clear and profound. She rises and steps outside, the cool morning air brushing against her skin. The village is just beginning to stir, the sounds of life awakening filling the air. As she gazes out at the fields and the well, at the faces of the people she loves, Zari feels a peace settle over her, deep and unshakable. The serpent's words echo in her heart, a final gift from the desert that tested her so long ago. She knows now that her journey was never truly about her alone. It was about the lives she touched, the lessons she shared, and the future she helped shape. And as the sun rises, casting its golden light over the village, Zari smiles, her heart at peace. The desert's secrets are no longer hers to carry alone. They belong to the generations who will walk its sands, guided by the light of her legacy. The village awakens to a morning unlike any other. The air carries a stillness, a quiet reverence, as though the desert itself holds its breath. Zari, the woman who once walked through its harshest trials to bring life to her people, has passed peacefully in her sleep. Her hands, once strong and determined, now rest gently at her sides, her face serene, as if she has simply stepped into another journey. The news spreads softly through the village, carried not by cries of grief, but by a shared sense of gratitude and awe. For Zari's life was not one of loss, but of profound giving, a life that shaped the very soul of the community. The villagers gather around her home, their voices hushed, their hearts heavy yet full. They tell stories of her courage, her wisdom, and the love she poured into every corner of their lives. The children, who once sat at her feet to hear tales of the desert, now cling to their parents, their eyes wide with questions. Is she gone? One whispers, clutching a small, smooth stone Zari once gave her. No, her mother replies, her voice steady but tender. She's not gone. She's in the water, in the fields, in the stories we tell. She's everywhere. As the sun climbs higher, the village prepares to honor her in a way befitting her legacy. They carry her to the well at the center of the village, the very well that once ran dry and now brims with life-giving water. The elder, his voice trembling with emotion, speaks words of remembrance. Zari walked into the desert so that we might live, he says, his gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. She carried the weight of sacrifice so that we might thrive. And though she has left this world, her spirit remains with us, a light that will never fade. The villagers pour water from the well into a ceremonial bowl, each drop a symbol of the life Zari restored. They pour it onto the earth, watching as it seeps into the soil, a gesture of gratitude and connection. The children place flowers around the well, their small hands trembling with reverence, their tears mixing with the water. It's a moment of quiet beauty, a testament to the power of one life to touch so many. In the days that follow, Zari's story becomes woven into the fabric of the village's identity. Her journey to the Enchanted Oasis, once a tale of myth and wonder, now carries a deeper meaning. It's no longer just a story about water or survival. It's a story about love, sacrifice, and the strength of the human spirit. The oasis itself remains a place of legend, its waters guarded by the Serpent, but its true power lies in the lives it transformed through Zari's courage. The desert, once a place of fear and isolation, now whispers her name, its winds carrying her legacy across the sands. As the years pass, Zari's story becomes a bedtime tale, told to children under the starlit sky. Once, the storyteller begins, there was a girl who walked into the heart of the desert to save her people. She faced storms, mirages, and the serpent's trials, but her heart never wavered. She taught us that the greatest treasures aren't found in gold or water, but in the bonds we share and the love we give. The children listen, their eyes wide with wonder, their hearts stirred by the tale. And in their dreams they see Zari, her face glowing with kindness, her spirit a guiding light in the darkness. The village thrives, its fields lush, its people united, but Zari's absence is felt in small, quiet ways. A mother hums her lullaby to a restless child. A farmer pauses to thank the earth for its bounty. A traveler passing through hears her story and carries it to distant lands. And always, always, the desert whispers her name, a reminder that even in the harshest of places, love and selflessness can flourish. Zari's journey may have ended, but her legacy lives on a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of the human heart.